Black mail-order bride was mocked for her race. But one man gave her the life she deserved. They said the past was buried in the red soil of Riverbrook. But when a stranger steps off the train with a suitcase full of forgotten truth, the town finds out that not all roots stay hidden, especially when they belong to someone who remembers. Before we start the story, write in the comments from which part of the world you're watching today. They were staring before she stepped off the last metal stair. Not openly, not all of them, but enough to make Amara Wilson feel the tightening in her chest that always came when she entered unfamiliar places with familiar suspicion. The Riverbrook train station was little more than a shaded bench under a peeling awning and a cracked sign swinging from rusted bolts. A dusty pickup truck idled nearby. Children watched from a fence. Somewhere a dog barked once and then fell silent. Her suitcase landed with a soft thud. She smoothed the hem of her navy blue skirt, adjusted her hat, more out of habit than need, and looked around. There he was, Harold Pierce, older than the photo, thinner too, with eyes that scanned her face the way someone might look at a stranger who'd sat in their seat. He stepped forward and stopped short. For a moment the breeze carried nothing but the hum of cicadas and the distant grinding of a departing train. Then he spoke, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "I think there's been a mistake." She blinked once. "No, there hasn't." His face tightened, as if he'd tasted something bitter. "You didn't say... I didn't expect..." He gestured vaguely at her skin, then laughed awkwardly. "I meant what I wrote in my letters, but I didn't mean for... this." It was fast, cruel in how rehearsed it sounded. "You should go back to wherever you came from," he added. "It'll be better for everyone." That was when she noticed him. The man leaning on a cane by the station's side door, half in shadow, Alexander Maxwell. He hadn't flinched, hadn't turned away. He simply watched, eyebrows slightly raised, as if evaluating a situation far beyond what had just been said. Amara didn't cry. She didn't argue. She looked Harold Pierce in the eyes, nodded once, and turned. Her suitcase rolled behind her with a steady rhythm that only made the silence sharper. Then Alexander's voice cut through the air. "Miss, you don't look like someone who needs rescuing, but I imagine you might appreciate a place to think." She stopped, slowly turned. "I've got a guest house. It's empty. If you'd prefer solitude over a station bench, the offer stands." The pause between them was measured, respectful. "I don't know you," she said. "And I don't know you," he replied. "But I just watched a man embarrass himself in front of half the town. It seems only fair someone offers you a better first impression of Riverbrook." She studied him. His voice was even, calm. He wore an old white shirt, suspenders, and boots dusted from walking his fields. She nodded again, this time not in defeat, but consideration. "I'll stay 2 nights," she said. "Then I'll decide." He smiled faintly. That's more than Harold deserved. The guest house was small but clean, surrounded by pecan trees and the dry whisper of tall grass. Inside, the air smelled of lavender and wood polish. She unpacked slowly, letting her hands trace the edge of the bed, the curtains, the books on the shelf. Books. That was something. That night, Alexander brought over dinner. Cornbread, greens, fried catfish. "I figured you didn't come all this way for someone like Pierce," he said, placing the tray on the small table. "Mind if I ask what brought you?" Amara ate a few bites before answering. "Letters," she said. "Promises and hope." "Hope?" he echoed. "A dangerous thing here? I've seen worse." He tilted his head. "Where are you from?" "Originally, Selma, but I taught school in Atlanta until last year." "Why'd you leave?" She hesitated. Then, as if deciding there was no point in guarding broken glass, she said, "My grandmother passed. She left me something. Letters, papers, a map. She always told me our family had land. Not just any land. Land that was taken. Taken how? Legally, on paper, but not honestly." That caught his attention. "My grandfather, Joseph Freeman, was born a slave. After the war, he was given land by a Union officer. He built a home, had a family. When he died, my great-uncle tried to keep it, but the documents were stolen, rewritten, or ignored. My grandmother kept copies. She always said the truth would find its way back. Alexander leaned back. And you think the land's here? She nodded. I've traced everything. Deeds, census lists. Some of the original coordinates match plots near the center of Riverbrook. That's a bold claim. It's not a claim, she said. It's a fact, and I have the proof. He was quiet for a while, then stood. I have a key to the town archive. Used to be my father's. If you want to dig, I can get you in. Her eyes narrowed. Why would you help me? He shrugged. Because if you're right, someone needs to listen, and I don't like what I saw at the station. That night, alone in the guest house, Amara pulled out the bundle of papers from the lining of her suitcase. Yellowed, creased, handwritten, and typed. She laid them across the bed like puzzle pieces. The town thought she had come chasing love. They had no idea she'd come chasing history. And history, she knew, didn't stay buried forever. By the second morning, the birds knew her. They greeted her with chirps just before dawn, right as the mist began lifting off the fields that surrounded Alexander Maxwell's property. The light was soft, golden, cautious, the kind of light that waited to see if it was welcome. Amara stood at the small sink, washing the same teacup for the third time, as if scrubbing ceramic could slow her thoughts. The documents were spread across the table behind her, folded letters in cursive ink, copies of land deeds, and an old hand-drawn map that seemed to hum with quiet defiance. She had grown up hearing stories about her grandfather. Not the kind that made it into textbooks, but the kind that lived in kitchen whispers and fireside memories. Joseph Freeman, not just a freedman, but a landowner. Not just a man, but a builder. She'd always imagined him with thick hands, deep laugh lines, and eyes that saw beyond what the world allowed. And now she might be living on soil that once belonged to him. A knock on the door pulled her back. Alexander stood there with a manila folder tucked under one arm and 2 steaming cups in his hands. Coffee? He asked. She hesitated. I don't drink coffee. He handed her the folder instead. Then I hope this will do. Inside were copies, property records, tax maps, and surveyor notes. Some pages dated back over 80 years. Many of them carried a name she recognized, Pierce. Others had been amended, overwritten, or mysteriously reassigned during the Reconstruction years. You got these from the town archive? She asked. He nodded. Half the town's old land records are still in boxes. I pulled the ones near the parcel numbers you gave me. There's something strange. Some of these plots passed through half a dozen hands in under a decade. She flipped through them. Because they were never sold. They were stolen. Not with guns, he added, with pens. That afternoon, they spread the documents across the floor of the guest house. Amara drew lines between owners, comparing notes with the map her grandmother had given her. Alexander added dates, deeds, and tax shifts. By dusk, a shape began to emerge. A rectangle of land, just over 70 acres, whose original owner had been listed in one faded record as J. Freeman Freed. The name vanished 3 years later, replaced by C.R. Pierce in what appeared to be different handwriting, newer ink on older paper. Amara tapped the line. That's it. That's when they took it. Alexander frowned. Then it's not just a claim anymore. It's a pattern. He stood and looked out the window. You understand what happens if you take this to the town? Yes, she said. They'll call me a liar, a gold digger, or worse. They'll say it's your word against theirs. That's why I brought my grandmother's letters. You think that'll be enough? I don't need it to be enough, she replied. I just need it to be true. The next day, she visited the town hall. She wore the same navy blue skirt, not out of habit, but intent. The clerk behind the desk, a woman in her 50s with a tight bun and sharper eyes, narrowed her gaze when Amara introduced herself. You're that woman from the station. Amara didn't flinch. I'm also the woman filing a public request to review historic property claims under the Land Integrity Act. The clerk pursed her lips. That's for state-level investigations. No, Amara said, sliding over the papers. It includes municipal jurisdictions, especially when land was transferred under questionable legal pretenses during post-war Reconstruction. A moment of silence. Then the clerk stood. "I'll get the mayor's assistant." By evening, the first message came. An envelope left on the guest house porch. No return address. Inside, a polite letter expressing concern for public harmony, suggesting that continued digging into distant history could cause unnecessary friction. It ended with an offer, a 5-figure donation in recognition of your grandmother's contributions to this community, on the condition she drop her request. Amara folded the letter and burned it in the fireplace. "Bribes," she said. "They're already nervous." Alexander looked at her across the room. "You're not going to stop." She looked him in the eyes. "Would you?" He didn't answer immediately. Then, "No, but I've never had to." They went back to the archive. This time, Amara brought gloves and a magnifying glass. Some of the old maps had barely survived time. In the far corner of one document, they found something that made Alexander go still. A notation, "Land in dispute, Freeman claim pending," refer to case file 37. The case file was missing, but someone had once admitted, in ink and in record, that Joseph Freeman had filed a protest. "That protest was buried," she whispered. Alexander looked grim. "Then it's time to dig it back up." Later that night, she sat alone, writing by oil lamp. The air was thick with heat and crickets. She wrote not to Alexander, not to the town, but to her grandmother. The letter began, "Dear Nana, you said truth was like a seed, that even if it's crushed, it remembers how to grow. I've found the root. I'm holding it in my hand, and they're already trying to pour cement over it." She signed her name and placed the letter among the others in the old envelope. Her family's archive, hidden in a suitcase, had become the spine of something bigger than vengeance. This wasn't about reclaiming property. This was about reclaiming voice. The whispers started before the week ended. First in the bakery, then in the church parking lot. At the barber shop, men folded their newspapers more slowly, watching each other in the mirror. At the ladies' auxiliary meeting, someone clutched her pearls a little tighter and muttered, "She's back again, digging." The name Freeman, once erased, had returned, and it traveled faster than the train that brought Amara into town. It didn't take long for the mayor to summon her. His office was overly tidy. On the wall behind him hung framed certificates and a map of Riverbrook marked with colored pins. Mayor Curtis Winslow was a man of smiles, polished ones that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You've certainly stirred interest," he said, offering her tea he didn't expect her to accept. "I've stirred the truth," Amara replied, "and that tends to cause discomfort." He gave a shallow chuckle. "I just want to make sure we avoid unnecessary conflict. These records you've brought, they're very old. The town's changed a lot since then." "So have the people who changed it," she said. "Some of them changed it with stolen ink." Curtis exhaled. "You're not from here, Miss Wilson. You don't know what this town has been through." "I know what my family went through," she said evenly. "And I have documentation to prove it." He tapped his fingers on the desk, thinking. "Let's say," he began, "just say, the council was willing to offer a settlement, a gesture of good faith. Quietly, of course." "No, you haven't heard the amount." "I've heard the price," she said, "and I'm not for sale." That night, Alexander found her sitting on the porch of the guest house, with the map spread across her lap, in a storm gathering on the horizon. "They offered you money," he guessed. She nodded. "I said no. I figured." He leaned against the railing. "They won't stop with offers." "I know. Then you'll need more than paper." She looked up at him. "I don't need a bodyguard, Alexander." "No," he said, "but you might need a witness." They returned to the archives the next day, not to search, but to copy. Every document, every map, every note of the missing case file 37. Alexander helped her scan, print, and organize. Amara wrote a formal brief, not legal, but factual. Cross-referenced, footnoted, annotated. She didn't shout. She didn't accuse. She documented. Word spread faster now. Some townspeople crossed the street to avoid her. Others left anonymous notes at the guest house, thanking her, quietly, tremblingly. And one morning a new envelope arrived. No threat this time. Just a line, typed in bold, You're not welcome here. It was unsigned, but Amara recognized the stationery. The Pierce family still owned the feed store, and some grudges. She showed it to Alexander. They're testing you, he said, seeing how much pressure it takes to make you fold. Then they're about to find out I don't fold. The mayor's next move was public. A letter printed in the Riverbrook Chronicle, warning against agitators from outside trying to revive ancient disputes and inflame community tensions. He didn't name her, but he didn't need to. Amara clipped the article and added it to her file. You're not angry, Alexander asked. No, I'm glad they printed it. Why? Because it means they're scared. A week later, Amara stood before the town council with her brief in hand. Not at the main meeting yet, just an informal hearing, but enough to draw a crowd. Enough for every seat to be filled, and then some. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't insult. She simply laid down the timeline. The land grant to Joseph Freeman in the year after the war, the illegal reassignment, the missing protest record, the forged signatures on the sale to Charles Pierce, the map that connected the modern center of Riverbrook to the 70 stolen acres. When she finished, there was no applause. But no one could look away. The following day, the Chronicle ran a quieter headline. Freeman claim resurfaces, council to review historic land case. The article included a quote from Curtis Winslow. We are committed to reviewing the matter with transparency and fairness. That same day, the Pierces closed their feed store for renovations. By evening, Harold Pierce had left town entirely. No farewell, no apology. And yet, Amara remained cautious. It's not enough to expose the truth, she told Alexander. We need to decide what to do with it. That night, sitting by the fireplace, he asked her quietly, What do you want, Amara? She looked at him, really looked, not just at his face, but the man behind the help, the silence, the steady support. I want the town to face itself. I want children to grow up knowing what their town was built on and who was buried beneath it. I want to build something with all of that truth. He nodded. Then what's the plan? She leaned forward, the firelight casting sharp shadows across her face. I'm going to speak at the next council meeting, openly, with everything I have, but not to accuse, to propose. Propose what? A foundation, a library, a school, built on the land they tried to erase, not to punish them, but to grow something they can't ignore. Alexander was quiet for a moment. Then he reached out, gently placing his hand over hers. You don't just carry fire, he said. You know how to plant it without burning down the forest? She smiled faintly. I'm not here to burn the town down, she whispered. I'm here to light the path forward. The night of the town council meeting, the courthouse steps were more crowded than they had been in years. Farmers with dusty boots, teachers in worn cardigans, a few teenagers who didn't know exactly why they were there, only that something unusual was happening. Even the church ladies came, their gloved hands folded, their expressions unreadable. Inside, the benches filled fast. Some stood pressed against the walls, others craned their necks through the windows. The air buzzed with heat and hesitation. Amara sat in the front row, her file on her lap, her heart steady. Alexander stood at the back of the room. He had insisted, not as her shield, but as her shadow. Quiet, constant. Mayor Curtis Winslow opened the session with the usual pleasantries. Local zoning matters. A request to approve funds for the annual Peach Festival. Then came a pause. Not long, but waited. We have one final matter this evening, he said. Miss Amara Wilson has requested to address the council regarding a historical land inquiry. We will allow her 5 minutes. Amara stood. No trembling. No fear. Only the sound of her footsteps as she walked to the podium and opened her file. She did not speak immediately. She let the room settle. Let the weight of silence fall like a curtain before the performance. Then she began. My name is Amara Wilson. I was born in Selma. I am a teacher by trade. I came to Riverbrook under different intentions, but what I found here was more important than what I expected. She held up a map. This is a copy of the original land parcel granted to my grandfather, Joseph Freeman, a freedman, in the year following the end of the Civil War. He lived on this land, farmed it, paid taxes on it, died on it. She raised another sheet. This is a forged deed, filed 8 years later, listing the land under the name of Charles Pierce. The ink is newer than the paper. The signatures don't match. There is no legal transfer between the two. Murmurs began. The room shifted uneasily. I've traced every owner since. Many of the homes you live in, the shops you visit, the roads you drive, they were built on land taken not by violence, but by silence. Legal silence. She stopped. Let that sink in. I'm not here to ask for that land back, she continued. I'm not here to see homes torn down or lives uprooted. I'm here to offer something different, a way forward. She reached into the file and held up a typed proposal. I propose the creation of the Freeman Foundation, a public trust funded by a portion of municipal development taxes and voluntary donations from those families whose legacies benefited from this land. The mayor stirred in his seat. One of the councilwomen whispered something behind a raised hand. I propose that a section of this land be dedicated to building a new library, the first truly public library in Riverbrook, not one named after old governors or donors, one named after my grandmother, Sarah Freeman, who kept every letter, every deed, every trace of our erased history. She didn't raise her voice, but the room was silent. I propose a school, a space for every child, not just white, not just black, to learn the history of where they live, not the version in textbooks, but the one in the soil beneath their feet. Now she looked at the mayor. You had a chance to fix this quietly. You offered me money to disappear. I refused, because I'm not here to be erased. I'm here to build. She turned to the audience. This is not a threat. It's a choice. You can bury this again, or you can be part of something that outlives all of us. A pause, then softly, our children deserve to stand on land that tells the truth. And she stepped down. There was no applause. Not at first. Just breath. Then a slow sound. One man. Then another. Then a woman near the window. Until the room pulsed with quiet, rhythmic clapping. Not loud, but certain. The council looked stunned. Mayor Winslow called for a recess. People spilled into the courtyard. Some argued, others simply stared at Amara as if seeing her for the first time. Alexander met her outside, holding 2 cold bottles of soda. Didn't burn the place down, he said. No, she replied. Just cracked the walls. He handed her a bottle. What now, he asked. She took a sip. We wait. 2 days later, the council announced a formal review. 1 week after that, the Chronicle published an op-ed titled, Why We Must Face Riverbrook's Past and Build Its Future. It was unsigned, but everyone knew Alexander had written it. Amara received dozens of letters, some hateful, many curious, a few apologetic. One was handwritten by a girl named Grace Martin, age 12, who wrote, Dear Miss Wilson, my teacher told us history is not fair, but learning it is. I want to read books in the Sarah Freeman Library when it opens. Please don't stop. Love, Grace. Amara pinned it above her writing desk. The next week, the town council approved her proposal by a vote of 4-3. The Freeman Foundation was born. And Amara Wilson, once rejected at a train station, now had a seat at the table where Riverbrook would decide its future. 1 year later, the train still stopped in Riverbrook, but now there was a new sign on the platform. Welcome to Freeman Station, in elegant bronze beneath the names Joseph and Sarah Freeman. No ribbon-cutting ceremony, no marching band. Just a simple morning in spring when the plaque was installed. The mayor didn't attend. He'd stepped down quietly 3 months earlier, citing health reasons. But the town came, not in crowds, but in families. Small groups, curious children, a few old-timers who muttered about changes, then lingered anyway, as if part of them wanted to understand. Inside the town center, a red brick building stood where an abandoned storefront once crumbled. The new Sarah Freeman Public Library opened its doors without ceremony, but people noticed the shelves, full, current, and for once, fully accessible. No restricted hours, no members lists, just books, light, and time. Amara stood at the entrance on the first morning it opened. She didn't wear a suit or heels, Just a soft dress, her grandmother's locket, and a clipboard with a list of first visitors. The first person through the door was Grace Martin, now 13, holding a notebook and asking where she could find books on how to write real stories. "Start here," Amara said, handing her a pen. "Write yours." The school opened 2 months later, the Joseph Freeman School for Civic Learning, a place where history and truth weren't electives, but foundations. Alexander helped oversee its restoration, quietly. His name wasn't on any wall. That was intentional. "I had enough things with my name on them," he said. "This time I want something that outlives me, without owing me." He never left the guest house, but slowly he and Amara began carving out something more than cohabitation. They shared breakfasts, evenings on the porch, quiet debates about books, policy, legacy. Once he reached for her hand as they passed the field where the old Freeman land once lay untouched. She didn't pull away. "I didn't save you," he said one evening. "No," she replied, "but you gave me the space to save myself." He smiled. "And somewhere along the way, you saved more than yourself." Harold Pierce's name was never spoken publicly again. He sold his remaining properties through a broker and moved north. Rumors said he remarried. Others said he never recovered from the embarrassment. But the truth was simpler. He chose to disappear from a town that had chosen to remember. The Freeman Foundation grew faster than expected. Local donors, some of them from families named in Amara's original brief, began contributing, not out of guilt, out of recognition. It became the first institution in Riverbrook to offer scholarships to both Black and white students. Not as charity, but as investment. Amara became its director. She still taught 3 days a week, still wrote in the evenings. Her manuscript, part memoir, part history, neared completion. She never named names in her draft, only truths. One evening on the anniversary of her arrival, Alexander handed her a small box. Inside was a simple ring. Not expensive, not flashy. "You don't need a symbol," he said, "but I'd still like to build something permanent, together, if you'd have me." She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she took the ring, held it up to the light, and smiled. "I came here with a suitcase and no place to go," she said. "Now I have a home, a purpose, and a man who doesn't need to stand in front of me, just beside me." She kissed him gently, then whispered, "Yes,